Hello and welcome back to your next episode of Military Ship Design. In this episode we'll be going over carriers, how to use fighters in conjunction with them, a bit more about carrier operations, and also the mechanics behind them in particular. Hey guys, welcome back. This is post recorded after the fact. I just want to go over a few things just to clear up anything in case I get a comment. If you want to research a hangar deck or a boat bay, you go over to logistics, you go to boat bay, you research that, then you can research hangar deck, and then you can also research boat bay small. Boat bay small allows 125 tons and they can be stacked. Boat bay normal gives 250 tons and they can be stacked. And then hangar decks give 1,000 tons. So these each give that amount of tons in hangar space. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of the video. So, a carrier is a vessel that contains a hangar deck. A hangar deck can allow other vessels to dock with that vessel. So, a 6,000 ton hangar deck can allow either 6 1,000 ton vessels or one 6,000 ton vessel. Or it can allow 12 500 ton vessels, and so on and so on. Hangar decks in C++ do not require flight berths. They come with their own. To say that they do require them, but they come with their own. Unlike in VB6, where you'd have to add them yourself. Every hangar deck comes with 20 flight berths attached onto it, and you do not have to worry about that. The second thing is the mechanics around them. So once you have your fighters inputted into this screen that we went over, so you will design your fighters accordingly, which we went over in the last episode, and then you will come over here and you will add them to the carrier, and they will appear over here and appear here. Once they are in the strike group, there's a few things that allow you to benefit from it. One, it allows you to keep track of what you're going to have, and two, it allows it so when you build fighters, so if we go over here and we build fighters, it's going to take a little bit of time, so I'm not going to do this now, but if we built a fighter and we assigned it, so if I go over here and I say Earth Carrier Strike Group, if I now then build that fighter that's the space stations, that's the strike group, if I then build the fighter to that strike group, it will automatically land and assign on that vessel. So that's one way of landing them and getting them assigned properly. Vessels above 1,000 tons cannot have this occur because there cannot be vessels above 1,000 tons can't be assigned to a carrier, quote unquote, but you can still put them in the vessel if you want to. The next thing I'm going to talk about is going to be a little bit more on the carrier operations side of things, in terms of how carriers work in conjunction with fleet orders and fleet commands, and how you can best do with them. Now, one of these things is going to be ammunition. So if you have fighters, I'm just going to quickly get this up. If you have fighters that use box launchers or use missiles, they are going to require a way to reload on a carrier. So how carriers work is that if you have a fighter on a military hangar deck, okay, they do not require maintenance, the fighter, and they also get automatically refueled and reloaded, even without the carrier having its own refueling and ordnance systems. They also get their maintenance supplies back accordingly if there is enough spare to give to the fighters. And they should repair themselves over time. Basically, this means that you will want a magazine on your carriers so that your fighters can launch, fire a salvo, come back to the carrier, reload, and rearm, go again. And this is because box launchers can only be used in hangar decks, so you want that magazine on the ship. So for this ship, I have a magazine of 720, and I have 180 of these anti-ship guided missiles on here. And this will allow them to draw up. So you want to be thinking, okay, if I have 8 interceptors and they fire 8 missiles per interceptor, that's going to be 64 missiles every single time they fire. So I'm going to want, 360 missiles, let's say, so they can fire X amount of salvos, okay? So think of it like that. The next thing we're going to go over is going to go to our naval organization, and we're going to talk about specifically carrier naval organization and what it does. And I've gone over a little bit about basic carrier operations, but in this I'll be going over more detailed. So if you have fighters that aren't landed, what you're gonna want to do, they're in the same fleet, or just in another fleet. So if they're in another fleet, skip this part. You need to select this part. If they're in the same fleet though, you need to do this. You grab them, detach. You detach how many fighters you want to detach and land them in whatever squadron. Then you go over here, you go to the fleet that has the carrier in it, you go to land on assigned mothership, land on specified mothership and assign, or no assign. Or if they're already assigned to that ship, then you can just simply do land on assigned mothership. And that is very, very useful in terms of dealing with stuff like that. So I'm going to land it on the assigned mothership now. Boom, it's finished. And if I go back, this will now be assigned accordingly here. And then you can put the fighters back in the squadron, so to speak. So 1 second. If I just grab this, yep. So you can just drag them back into said squadron, and then you've landed them, and that's a very effective way of doing that. There we go. So again, to launch, all you need to do is detach them. I advise having subfleet, as you can just click detach, and that will detach all of them. And you can also do it from here, detach X amount of vessels from the squadron, and then you can put them back into the subfleet accordingly. And so that can be very, very useful. The second thing about carrier operations is that in terms of loadout and stuff that you need, you can go into here, and this is for all ships as well. So this is the class loadout. So this is the loadout that they have in the class window, and they will draw from. This is the specific ship's loadout. So if you want to build multiple ships, but you don't want them all to load the exact same kinds of weapons, you can change it here. And this is their current loadout. Fighters will draw from this accordingly. So if we go to our fighter squadrons, they will directly draw. They have this loadout, and they will directly draw from their mothership. Now, another thing to consider, in terms of carrier operations and carrier mechanics, is that ships, specifically like rapiers and all this stuff, have their own bonuses for their commanders who are commanding them. So if you can see here, he's got fighter combat 25%. So now in C sharp, I said this. I think I said this mistake earlier, but it is C sharp. I just think C plus too much. In C sharp, you can add, you can have commanders with fire combat bonuses that directly affect the fighter that they are a part of. So that is something to also be considered. It is the general idea of fighter design and how fighters are used in conjunction with fleets. Now, there are several ways to use fighters and different things that they can be used for appropriately, all manners of things, commercial, all that. But I'm going to not go too much further on the topic because that will be left for the design philosophy video on carrier doctrine. But in this video, we're just going over the mechanics, specifically related to carriers, carrier operations, and stuff like that. Now, something else to consider in terms of fighters that I haven't covered previously is that fighters, most fighters tend to not have sensors. So there's either two ways of designing them. Either you have a specifically designed fighter with a sensor on it. That point is to scout ahead for the rest of the fighter group, or you have big sensors on the carrier, and then the fighter group uses those sensors to be able to lock on and see targets appropriately. As in, the carrier will coordinate what it sees to the fighter groups, and they will then be able to lock onto that target with fire controls. So keep that in mind. You can either, as I said, either use carriers to spot, or you can make scout fighters if you want your fighters to be more independent. Usually, fighters have a short range, so you don't really want to go for the other option unless you have some design purpose for them. But it doesn't mean it's bad. Carriers, usually having big sensors can be a detriment though, because usually the enemy will target the ship with the biggest sensor lock, or the ship that's the highest tonnage, its big sensor lock, etc. But yeah, besides that, that is generally how fighters work in terms of loading them, landing them, launching, and various other things. And it can be quite useful in a lot of ways. There's also a few other buttons that I've got here. You can show obsolete fighters, and you can obsolete fighters here and stuff like that, and that can be very useful if you need to get rid of some of the stuff here. So for example, I can just obsolete, boom, gone, and that's gone accordingly. So that is definitely something that you can consider, and it's very useful. So yeah, now that we've talked about some more advanced carrier operations in terms of how you operate carriers, launch, landing more clearly, and also talks about the design characteristics of a carrier in general, and also the a bit of the uses, but we'll be talking more about them in philosophy, and also mechanics surrounding them. I will be ending the video, and I hope you did enjoy. Please subscribe, as only about 20% of the people who watch these videos are subscribed. So if you could leave a subscription or even a like or anything, that would be greatly appreciated. And we'll be back in the next video, which is going to be going over the philosophy for carrier philosophy, how that works, going over various doctrines in a long-ended series, and I'm sure that'll get quite a lot of people interested. I'll see you next time. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a good day.